viewers, and welcome to the Personal Injury Law Show. This is a show that talks about everything to do with compensation in Victoria. That is workers' compensation, transport accidents, public liability, medical negligence, superannuation. We talk about everything. My name is Tony Carbone. I'm a personal injury lawyer of over 25 years experience. With me tonight I've got a partner in a transport accident department, Mrs. Don Maffia.
G'day Tony, g'day viewers.
And also an experienced lawyer in transport accidents, Mr. Robert Paoletti.
Thanks Tony, it's always a pleasure to be here.
Now tonight we're going to be doing a number of stories that are in the news. The first one is about the story of the sucker punch, in other words the king hit, and the damage it does. Yeah. Don, what can you say about it?
Well, it was a campaign on the Herald Sun, Tony, which I ran for a few days, about people being king hit in social settings, nightclubs, even footy fields. King hits, for the viewers, it's just a direct punch into the face and causing serious injury, and a lot of time has caused death, Tony. Now, not so much from the punch, but actually the after effects of the punch when they fall and hit their heads.
Well, Rob, what's your take on this?
Well, look, it is an alarming statistic because people don't realise the effects of some of these punches. People think it might just be a punch in the face and a bruise, but the idea of a sucker punch or a king hit is to knock a person to the ground. And when that happens, the sheer force of the punch and the turning of the head can shake the brain, and people can actually die from the impact on the ground. It's very, very scary.
Well, it's extraordinary that when you do get hit in the head with that level of velocity and trauma, the brain actually shakes. And that in itself causes a lot of damage. And furthermore, when you hit the ground.
Yeah.
So, look, people don't realise when they're throwing these punches, they think it's just a punch. When your kid's growing up, you're throwing punches all over the place. But the amount of damage you cause is just phenomenal. And people are going to get prosecuted. Manslaughter.
Well, that's right. They're liable criminally for assaults. Now, be it on a footy field, be it on a social setting, a nightclub. They will result in some criminal prosecution, Tony, but also civilly they're liable. They can be liable for civil suits against them for the damage the death caused, and if it's caused death, they can look at a dependency act for the dependents of the person who's died.
And the person that's been sued is going to have this judgment hanging over their head for 15 years,
yeah,
which is pretty significant.
And Tony, in that arena, it's an intentional tort. So in Victoria, there's absolutely no thresholds. It's just show the injury and show the damage.
So you throw a punch, don't matter how much damage you cause, you're going to get sued.
That's right.
Apart from being prosecuted criminally.
That's right.
Let's get on to the story of the ambos again. I'm really sorry to keep coming back to this, but there's a shortage of them. They're overworked. They say they're underpaid. But Rob, what's your take on the ambulance drivers?
Well, look, as we said, the statistics are showing that they may be understaffed, and look, they really are being put under the pump, and it's really a commendable profession for people to go into it. But if they're understaffed, it makes it very difficult for them to respond in good time to some kind of emergency. And when it comes to things like heart attacks, it can come down to seconds.
And Don, in some instances in the country, some of these ambulances are taking up to 30 minutes to get to people that need their services.
Yeah, that was the statistics they showed. It was up to 30 minutes just to get to the people in emergency situations, and it's quite concerning. I think we need to look at the whole system again, and I know we'll keep, like you said, Tom, keep referring to it, but where there is such a high number of ambulance officers who are under stress, overworked, high number of late, I guess, time reaction to get from the call out to the person, it is a little bit concerning to them.
And to state the obvious, Rob, there'd be a lot of people that would be dying from the fact that there's delays.
Exactly, quite potentially, and that's something you want to avoid at all costs. But fortunately, the government is trying to take steps. There's discussions of putting millions of dollars into recruitment and resources, and hopefully they can help to correct the situation and take some of the pressure off these ambos.
And also, for the families of the victims, people that do die because of the late attention they get, there'd be some significant trauma and psychological damage into the future, because they're always going to have lingering in their head, what if they had got there earlier? Would it have made a difference?
Yeah.
You don't want that, do you?
No.
It could be a very long half an hour to wait for these people.
Viewers, tonight's topic we're going to be dealing with is transport accidents and rehabilitation, and also various things that people ask from a Transport Accident Commission. So I think it's suitable for the topic tonight that we're talking about some instances involving articles, L-platers, Rob.
There are, again, going back to the statistics, there are a lot of alarming statistics regarding L platers and P platers at the moment. It seems that up to something like 40 L and P platers are having their licences suspended because of drink driving charges, basic road offences and things like that. So there's
significant speeding charges.
That's exactly right.
And Don, L platers?
L platers a little bit concerning again. I mean, it starts earlier on, doesn't it, Tony? You've got to give a lot of training to these people who are getting behind the wheel. And it does say that the peers do reflect a lot on how they train them, how to prepare them to get out there, drive a road. And again, like everything else, it's got to start earlier on. Once you start, that's when the proper training's got to go in.
But correct me if I'm wrong. There must be an experienced driver next to them, doesn't there?
You would think so, and under those circumstances, there's really no explanation for the conduct. But with P platers who are alone, you're very much dependent on the training you've had from the parents or siblings or whoever has, taught them how to drive. And that's really when it has to come to, when the education has to happen.
And P platers, wouldn't you just take them off the road if they're behaving like that early in their driving life?
Well, obviously the licence will be suspended, but you're quite right, Tony. I mean, that in a time in the future that can reapply. I think there's got to be stricter tests. If that does happen, they have to show a certain amount of driving skills before they can get their licence done again. But
Rob, like someone that's been convicted of drink driving, why don't they have to go to special school?
Look, there's always the potential for that. You can always explore different options, but it's always perhaps best to avoid that. I mean, if they just get proper instruction from a parent or a sibling, they're taught the responsibility on the road, they're taught the consequences can be quite dramatic, maybe they can understand that better and take better responsibility on the road.
On the subject of transport accidents, 2 killed in head-on collision in Bonnie Doon. Again in the country, Don?
Again in the country, I think not the best road surfaces going around in Bonnie Doon area. Unfortunately, in this case, there's 2 killed in a head-on collision, Tony. Very tragic again. We hear it often and often again. It's just a story that just doesn't go away.
Rob, head-on, so someone's been significantly careless.
Well, it also comes down to the danger of the roads. I think if you're going to be out on one of these country roads, it might be useful to actually study the roads you're going to be on, know what the treacherous ones are, and just take that extra bit of care when you're on those roads to avoid what could be absolutely tragic circumstances.
I guess on those roads where you've got cars coming from both sides, you've got to be extra cautious,
That's right.
don't you?
Absolutely.
People are mucking around with mobile phones and tape recorders and cassette players and
That's
cigarettes
right.
and
that's just
who knows
not on
what.
those roads.
Distraction.
Yeah.
And you might have kids in the back and it's tragic, isn't it?
It
Well,
is.
it's just a split second, Tony. If they're distracted for a split second, it could result in something like this. So you've got to pay extra caution when you're on those type of roads, or any road for that matter.
And Don, that's the key to it, distracted. You're only distracted for a split second.
That's right.
Now, before I do the next article, which will lead on to our topic of tonight, it's talk of bringing the alcohol limit down to 0.02, the Traffic Minister. I think it's a very contentious issue. It's an interesting issue. So we'll go to this break. We'll come back to that straight after. So stay tuned, viewers.